Welcome to our Soil Health Assessment Work Group, or SHAW meeting, for Friday, the 24th of September. We're going to look back and talk about what we learned from the first 6 months of SHAW, Soil Health Assessment Work Group meetings, and we're going to try to highlight some takeaways from our first dozen SHAW seminars. But actually, I had to add the word bakers because it turns out prior to today, we've done 13 meetings. Our speakers today are myself and Lydia Fitzgerald, a new conservation agronomist working with all of us. I'll introduce Lydia in a little bit and tell you a little bit about her background. Just a reminder to all of you to take the pledge that you are for the soil. This is a Virginia Cooperative Extension and Soil Health Coalition, Virginia Health Coalition initiative. We're part of it too, to boost awareness of soil health and these four key principles that are the foundation of building organic matter and enhancing soil biology. You can go to forthesoil.org and take this pledge, and I encourage you to do that. Here's the bottom line. We've done 13 sessions. Thought this would be an opportunity to look back and see what we've covered. So to put this in context, we have made recordings of 12 of the 13. And at about 2.5 hours average each, that's 30 hours of videos. So just to go back and review what we talked about, that's a lot of material. I'll note that those videos, part of getting ready for today was recovering or finding all those recordings and at least getting them to where Lydia and myself could watch them. We still haven't edited them and posted them for others to watch, and perhaps that's something we still want to do, but we're one step closer to that. But Lydia, in particular, reviewed some of the earlier session videos just for us to remember what we talked about back in February and March. So that's where we are. Here's our plan of action that I propose. First of all, if you know me, you know I like to provide a lot of context, and you never know who's listening who hasn't listened before. So want to provide some context and some introduction to the topic for today and to our speakers. And then some more background and context, and explain kind of how we got here. How do we get to where soil health assessment is such a hot topic in NRCS and Virginia NRCS in particular, and some of the terminology we use. So a lot of background, and some of it will be review for you, but hopefully it'll be useful for most. Then we're going to look back at 6 months of SHAW. What were our goals, right, for these SHAW meetings and this soil health assessment work group? And Lydia's going to go over some quick summaries and takeaways from selected past seminars, and we'll point out some conclusions and key lessons learned, hopefully. Then we'll also talk about looking forward. We've done this for a while. What are our plans for the future and for soil health assessment activities in general? You'll notice I'm using this SHA as an abbreviation for soil health assessment, as indicated up here, right? So soil health is SH, soil health assessment, SHA, and soil health assessment work group is SHAW. So finally, some Q&A and discussion, and we can try to weave that in as we go. And that's usually the greatest strength of our sessions is opportunity to discuss. That's just quickly explaining where we're headed, and now I want to jump into an introduction. When we talk about soil health, we need to define what we mean by soil health up front. Like the term human health, it sounds really simple, but it is a very broad term that can mean different things to different people. And legitimately so. There's a lot under the heading of soil health. To Virginia NRCS, soil health has two levels of meaning. A narrower technical meaning, the capacity of the soil to function, right? And you can see over here we have two soils. They were born the same. They're from opposite sides of the same road, but they were managed very differently. And clearly, in terms of their capacity to fulfill basic functions, support plant growth, regulate the hydrologic cycle, break down and recycle waste into their component nutrients. I mean, these soils are going to function differently. And part of what the technical meaning of soil health is how do we optimize the dynamic properties here and properties that we can measure. Another element in that technical meaning of soil health is the idea of soil health management principles. So when we talk about soil health, sometimes an agronomist or farmer is really talking about management. Soil health also has a broader strategic meaning that is important, and it's something that soil scientists may be a little less comfortable with, but this idea of a soil stewardship communication strategy and sales pitch and an empowering and optimistic farmer movement and mindset. I mean empowering by empowering farmers to take control of their futures and how many and the inputs they put in and the opportunity to enhance productivity and so forth. So you notice this asterisk here because I'm pointing out that this definition of NRCS, Virginia NRCS's view of soil health is from our strategic plan. But what we're focusing on in our soil health assessment work group, as you all know, is optimizing or the discussion of dynamic and measurable soil properties. So more the science of those properties. So what is soil health assessment? Like human health assessment, sounds pretty simple. We're just going to assess your health. That sounds simple at first, but that can be very complex and involve lots of different strategies depending on your goals. It can mean different things to different people. So to Virginia NRCS, soil health assessment means assessing, obviously a rating, measuring, quantifying these properties, the differences between these properties. What is our soil health assessment work group? Many of you have been on this before. Thank you for bearing with me as I make sure we're all on the same page. Our membership is relatively informal. There is a subset of Virginia NRCS staff that are pretty much self-selected, and some are more loyal than others, but thank you all for being here, the NRCS folks. And then we have selected external partners, and we're really lucky to have some very wise partners who have joined us today and have joined us in the past. So we were doing these recurring web-based meetings, right? The second and fourth Fridays of most months. We started in February of 2021. This is a typo. But today is our 14th session, which is hard to believe in some ways. So what are the goals? Why did we set this up? Well, we're going to get to that in a few minutes. I want to cover a few more introductory points before we get there. What I want to highlight here before we get to our goals for our Shaw sessions is, who are these people who are talking to you today? Because Lydia, some of you know her, but many of you don't really know her in her new role. So first, I'll just highlight who I am, state cropland agronomist and our lead contact with Virginia NRCS for soil health issues. And it's my 18th year on the job. So when some of you were little kids, potentially, I was already talking about this on behalf of Virginia NRCS. But more importantly, who is Lydia? And she's going to tell you a little bit about herself here in a moment. We're going to switch presenters. But I'll just tell you that she is our new Virginia Partnership Conservation Agronomist. And what that means is she's employed by Virginia Tech, but she's embedded with Virginia NRCS. And this is her 10th day it's her 11th day on the job. Forgive me. She started, I think she already has 10 work days under her belt. Now, the fact that she's giving part of this presentation so quickly just gives you a sense of it's amazing how much she's done for me already in the first 2 weeks. And that, as she'll explain, is because she's already been engaged in this topic and working for NRCS prior to taking on this job. But she is working on what we're calling our SH plus ICA project. So there's some question marks here. She's going to try to also explain what we mean by soil health and integrated conservation agronomy.
A lot of you I already know, some of you I don't, but just to give you a brief background of who I am. So I grew up in Nelson County, and I grew up there on a farm that grew a little more than 100 acres of pumpkins, and then also had corn and soybeans. And I also grew up working in my grandparents' apple orchard, so I have a pretty diverse agricultural background. I really liked it, and so I decided that I wanted to go into that as a career. And so I studied agronomy at Virginia Tech and got my bachelor's, and then went on to get my master's from the University of Kentucky in plant and soil science. And my research there was focused on poultry litter and looking at nitrogen transformations, which was very ironic because I started working out of graduate school in the Valley in Harrisonburg, where there's a lot of poultry litter. And then, ironically enough, I think Chris showed a picture of last time this group met was my official first day on the job. And I was out at Mike Phillips' farm working with poultry litter too. So it's just following me everywhere. But I had previously worked as a soil conservationist in the Harrisonburg field office. And because of my job there, I was actually involved with this work group from the beginning. And so that's giving me a really good background to be able to have that experience being on these meetings and being a part of this group in my previous job. That's been really beneficial to getting started in this position. So now that that's a little bit about me, we'll go back and revisit this term of SH plus ICA. So this term, just to try to explain it a little bit better, so it stands for Soil Health and Integrated Conservation Agronomy. And so when we think of a typical agency perspective of soil health, what comes to mind is no-till and cover crops. So what we're trying to do with this is help to expand that, because typically organic amendments or compaction management or the role of diversity is not really thought of or mentioned when we're talking about soil health a lot of times. And another thing that's left out sometimes is nutrient management and integrated pest management. These are really important, and sometimes they're not always incorporated into our view of soil health. But for farmers, it's all integrated. You know, when they're making decisions, they're considering each of these aspects. And so in order to better serve them and help them, we need to keep up and also understand their perspective. So our proposed concept for this is that we want to help our clients be able to think about it as a system to help move towards a more holistic, effective farming systems. Like I said, thinking of it as a whole system, not just as just soil health in this little box and just nutrient management over here or just IPM, but that's what's in the term, you know, integrated conservation agronomy. In order to do this, though, we need people. And so part of this SH and ICA plan is to help build up our agency technical expertise, you know, the number of people and the quality of people we have working on this. So that brings us to, you know, this new term, which can also be thought of as soil health plus. So not just the basic soil health, but also all of these other aspects of it tied in. So to help give maybe a little bit clearer picture, because it is pretty complicated, we have kind of a visual representation of this. And so, you know, at the core, we have this for the soil, you know, the 4 principles of soil health that we are all, you know, familiar with. And then you can add into that, you know, the no-till and cover crops, prescribed grazing, some of the other practices like crop rotation and action management. These are important parts to soil health. And all of these are working together to help build soil organic matter, which in turn is going to help build biology in the soil. And so that's, you know, a pretty good understanding of, you know, what soil health is. But like I mentioned before, we usually have, you know, nutrient management off here to the side and IPM over here to the side. They're not usually incorporated together. And so the goal of this program is to help integrate these together and see the ways that they work together and interact, so we can better understand that, like we said, to better help farmers or clients who view this as an integrated system. So yeah, so soil health plus. And if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to speak up or raise your hand and or use the chat. Hopefully Chris can see that. And okay, so now we're going to get into a little bit of what the actual team looks like for this SH and ICA. So as with, I feel like most agencies or most people, there's a lot of staffing shortages, which is an obvious obstacle. And so for this new team, the approach that they've taken is to have collaborative partnership. And so Chris kind of touched on that earlier. My position and this team is a collaboration between Virginia Tech and NRCS. So the idea is to have some full-time technical specialists like myself, and then some part-time farmer mentors to help build our team, who are hired by Virginia Tech with grant funds. So I am employed by Virginia Tech, but embedded within Virginia NRCS. And so the goal is to provide technical support to our staff within NRCS, to clients, and also to be able to assist partners. And as y'all know, I just started, 11 days ago, so I don't have the experience of this, but my understanding is that this has been discussed for a really long time. This has been in the works. And so they had a strategy written up and approved in 2019, and then they were awarded grants in 2019, 2020. And then I recently started, and we actually have some of our mentors in place already. So we're hitting the ground running, but it has been in the works for a little while. And so I'll give Chris a chance now if you want to add anything to my explanation of this.
Well, I think you did a really good job, and again, it's getting a little away from soil health assessment, but I think it's really important that everyone, as many people as possible, right, understand what we're doing and Lydia's unique role, the first partnership agronomist that we've had. Now, there is a name that you may have heard in the past, Trevor Simmons. Trevor was started in this same job 6 months ago or so, but he was a great candidate, but it turned out he wasn't a good fit, and he left within just a few weeks of starting. So we had to start over in our search, and I think we've got a really good outcome at this point. Also, I'll just point out that for the grants involved, DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, has been an important provider of match funds. And so, there are other partners involved, DCR in particular. And I think our hope is that this team can provide help to farmers and to partners, as well as NRCS staff and extension agents and so forth. So that's just a few other parts. Go ahead, Lydia.
Thank you, Chris. So with that, we'll go ahead and get into kind of some of the goals that Chris talked about. We'll move on now to, what did we learn from our meetings so far in this work group? So let's look back at our purpose, which is going to be looking back, what were our goals? Then we're going to try to see, did we achieve those? And we'll discuss some of what we heard and what we've learned over the past 6 months. And then we'll go into a little bit about where we're headed next with this work group. So the goals for the Virginia NRCS Soil Health Assessment Work Group and the goal for these meetings was to be able to share the principles from the Virginia NRCS strategic plan. And so that plan was in place, and we wanted to make sure that NRCS and some of our partners knew what those principles were so that we could get their feedback on them. And so throughout these meetings, Chris has been sharing those principles and reviewing them and getting a lot of feedback from everybody on them. And then we also wanted to better understand from the NRCS field office staff and learn from them about what the client needs are and what their needs are in terms of soil health assessment. So what they're looking for. And then we also wanted to be able to learn about and hear about what our partners are doing and what they're thinking in terms of soil health assessment. And so when I was thinking about this and looking at these goals, I was like, okay, well, that's good. These are all good goals, but what's the overall why? Chris always, tells us to always ask why. And so I'm going to let Chris go into a little bit of, well, these are goals, but why are we having these meetings and kind of the bigger picture.